So, I really just find articles and just talk about them sometimes. I was just poking around Writer's Digest, seeing what they've recently. Let's see what they're recently talking about. I quite like Writer's Digest. When I first started writing, I was sort of relying on some of their articles and stuff, even though they didn't always help. And I had a sip of coffee. Anyway, so I just happened to find this one. It's called 5 Tips for Writing Stories About Good versus Good. Now, the reason I thought, this is interesting is because of this beginning where it says, it's easy enough to write a good versus bad story, but what about good versus good? I thought, what do you mean good versus good? That is interesting. Is that different from stories where villains are against villains? Because the villain believes that they are doing something good. So what are we going to talk about here? Now, I haven't read this. I'm looking at this at the same time, same as you. So anyway, hi, I'm Enna. Welcome to this channel. Let's get into it. This is written by S.E. Redfearn on October 7, 2024. That was this month. It's October right now. But if you see this video and it's not October, this was written on October 7, 2024. So best-selling author S.E. Redfearn, it might be Redfearn, shares 5 essential factors to consider when writing a morally complex good versus good story. There's a quote from Leo Tolstoy: "The best stories don't come from good versus bad, but good versus good." Very interesting. So what is this good versus good? I have no idea. Let's see, how long does this introduction? Okay. If you don't know what these scrolling videos are, like if you're new here or something, I just find an article and scroll through it, and we review it and react to it and give our opinions and thoughts on it and see if it's good or not, or if it's terrible, or if it could be improved. How can it be improved? That's what we get into. It's easy to know who you are rooting for in Star Wars or Harry Potter. The bad guy is the one in black with a menacing voice or creepy serpent face. And while I love a good hero-villain trope as much as the next reader, the stories that have always enthralled me have been the ones where I am torn as to which side I'm reading for because the answer isn't clear. Doop-de-doo, doop-de-doo. One of the first books I fell in love with was John Grisham's A Time to Kill. It was impossible not to have sympathy for the aggrieved father who heroically carried out the justice he was denied for his 10-year-old daughter who was brutally raped. And yet, what would happen to society if vigilante justice was tolerated? Another brilliant example was My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult. I don't know how to say the name. I saw My Sister's Keeper movie, I think. I didn't know it was a book, or I did. I don't remember. I did see the movie. I don't remember much about it, but I did see the movie. How obligated was a sister conceived for the purpose of being a donor to continue to sacrifice for her sibling? There was no good or bad person in the story, just a whole lot of heartache in diabolical gray. And then there was the blockbuster Me Before You, which forced me to consider what makes life worth living and who has the right to make that decision. In my upcoming novel, Two Good Men, I address moral versus legal justice, but with a twist. I pose the question of whether it is okay to preemptively eliminate a threat before a crime has been committed. Below are 5 essential factors to consider when writing a morally complex story of good versus good. We shall see if it is essential or not. Miss Lady, who are you? Miss S.C. Redfearn? We shall see. We shall see if they are actually essential, because these things with these writing articles, they like to use, I guess they're called strong adjectives or maybe buzzwords like essential or must have or definite and stuff like that. But we'll see. So, what they mean by good versus good wasn't really about what I was saying, which was I thought it was something like villain versus villain, which is the villain thinks that he is doing the right and the other villain thinks that he is doing the right, and then they clash. That's not what the story is about. It's really about everything being kind of morally gray. So like in My Sister's Keeper, I'm going to talk about that one because I'm most familiar with it. There was these two siblings, and one sibling is sick and needs a donor or something, and so the other sister was sort of conceived for the purpose of being a donor. That is such a premise, isn't it? So nobody is doing a bad thing, but you kind of have to question, like, if how much, like, this sister that is created to be a donor, what about her life? Like, and I think she starts having some thoughts like against it and stuff. Like she wants her own life and things like that. And it really makes you think, but she has her own life, but her sister deserves a life too, and she can save her sister by being a donor, but doesn't she also deserve a life? That is something, isn't it? Don't really know what to think, and you just think and think and think about it. And that's what book hangover would be like, I guess, if I read the book. But I only... Is that a plane? I don't know if you can hear that. This microphone is pretty good. If you can, that was a plane. There's actually a plane base somewhere near here where I live. Anyway. So that is the good versus good. Meaning the thing that is one thing good is happening and another thing good is happening, but they're sort of conflicting in some way. That's really complicated, huh? I don't know. Do I have a story like that? I feel like I would recognize if I did or not. Although I have a story that I'm currently posting on Ream. It's called Alive at Dawn, and although the sort of premise on the story isn't really a good versus good type of thing, the villain of the story is only villainous towards people who are terrible people. But the way he goes about it is that he murders them and feeds their corpse to his demon. That is not good. That is not good to murder. But then again, he gives opportunities, paid opportunities, to people who are less fortunate. Even though those paid opportunities might involve murder, it's helping them get off of their feet. But is that good or bad? I don't know. Do you want to get rid of this villain, but then the terrible people will continue to be exploiting the poor people? So what do you do? Is this guy good or is this guy bad? I do like me some good morally great characters, but anyway, is that kind of like a good versus good? I'm not entirely sure. There's also a retired detective who acts on his own ego. So he only takes on cases where he thinks that it will make big news. So he denies people that he thinks it's too small of a case to not make big news. So that's a bad thing. But then he's putting all his efforts into helping people through terrible, terrible situations. So that's a good thing. So what? What is there? What do we think? I don't know. Maybe that's like the good versus good. Or am I getting it all wrong? What do you think? Both characters need to be unambiguously good and sympathetic. Choose your primary actors thoughtfully. There is no more important task than understanding who the story is about and conveying their motives and perspectives convincingly. This doesn't mean they need to be perfect. It's better if they're not. Flawed characters are far more interesting. But it is critical that their backgrounds and circumstances are explained compellingly enough for their viewpoints to be understood. It does make me think of my character in A Live at Dawn, the villain. His name is Richard. Richard's background is he has always seen these rich, selfish people. He's always hated these rich and selfish people, and that's due to his upbringing, seeing how rich and selfish his parents were and how much he hated that and how much he saw them exploit the poor. There's also another reason he hates the rich is because he sees them as these forms of gray cloud-shaped humans, so he doesn't see them as human at all. So they just completely disgust him. And he doesn't see the poor that way. He actually sees them as humans, so he wants to help them. But the way he helps them is by just murdering whoever he deems to be a horrible rich person, even though that person might not be a horrible rich person. So he is like a villainous Robin Hood in a sense. Steal from the rich, give to the poor. Is that good? I don't know, because it's not to say that all rich people are bad people, right? So what do you think? What do we think? I don't know. Is that what we're talking about here? But it is critical that their backgrounds and circumstances are explained compellingly enough. We already read that. Yes, okay. Readers can see past shortcomings so long as they recognize why a character is the way they are, and if they understand what drives them. Give insight into what makes them tick, why they're doing what they are doing, and that what they're doing is for understandable and compassionate reasons. Oh my gosh, I am getting so confused. Can you give an example? It would be really helpful to give an example from your book or somebody else's book or something, even a fake example. Create an example character and story for this article. That would be nice, actually. That would be nice to do that if they did that. If you don't want to use your story to reveal a plot or something, like a plot twist or something, just create an example for this article and then use it throughout. That would be very nice and helpful, actually, because I'm trying to really think about an example right now, if there's anything. One thing I want to say about this is that it makes sense. I think she's giving us stuff, but it could be more. It could be more examples. I have no. Okay, hold on. Let me think. Okay, give insight into what makes them tick, why they're doing what they're doing. So their motivations. Give their motivations and make their motivations be a reasonable type of understandable and compassionate. But does understandable does it have to be understandable and compassionate reasons? Or can it just be understandable reasons? Like, you don't know why a character might want to murder a character for like compassion or anything. Like, you won't feel compassionate of the character, but you will understand them. Is understanding the character enough? You don't have to be compassionate? Like, you don't have to see the compassionate side, or do you have to have this compassionate side? I don't know. What do you think? So, does their motivation have to be both understandable and compassionate in order for the reader to want to follow along their story? There needs to be a real dilemma in which the reader is torn between the two sides. Any good story has continuous conflict, struggle, and transformation. For a good versus good story to succeed, the two sides need to be pitted against each other in a face-off in which both perspectives are valid, true, and justifiable. That way, no matter how the story unfolds, there are dreaded consequences to what happens. I need examples. This is just words. This is just a bunch of words. This is just words. I need examples as to what exactly you're talking about here, because I am just so confused. Okay, hold on a moment. The two sides needed to be pitted. What would that even like look like if the two sides needed to be pitted against each other in a face-off? Does that mean the characters have to be in a physical face-off, or can they be like, can they do they have to see each other or not see each other? Can it be shown to the reader that they are maybe aware of each other? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Because in my sister's keeper, they are actually facing off with each other in a sense because they are the siblings. Is there any other story that's sort of like this? I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking of my own story, but I deliberately don't let the detective meet Richard, because the detective finds out about Richard. See, so, and he thinks, okay, this is a great case that will stroke my ego. I mean, he doesn't think in that way. He just thinks, I'm going to solve this case. But he's not doing it for good reasons, particularly, although it will save lives. But he doesn't meet Richard. Richard does find him eventually, but they don't actually face off with each other. There's a reason for that. A plot reason for that. And, so Richard and this detective, they never really face off, but the reader is shown where they sort of might clash, like how they might clash, but we don't actually see them actually clashing, at least not in Alive at Dawn. There is a sequel. Is that okay? Is that okay? I don't know. I need some more examples about what exactly, like, do you guys have any examples about these sort of good versus good type of people facing off with each other, pitted against each other, but in a non-physical way? When one side wins, the other loses, which means regardless of who comes out on top, it hasn't worked out wholly, and someone the reader cares about will have suffered. The constant tug of war is the driving pulse that compels the reader to turn the page. Ratchet up the struggle and make your characters pay for their choices, then force them to witness the consequences, confront their decisions, and ultimately question their own point of view. I did kind of think about with this part where it says ultimately question their own point of view. I thought about in my own story, this is about the sequel, but Richard meets the detective's son, who is able to converse with demons. Okay, so in this world, just because you can see demons doesn't mean you can talk to them or that the demon will see you as a worthy conversational partner. Demons don't just talk to anybody or interact with anybody or show themselves to anybody in a friendly manner. So there is something about the detective's son that intrigues the demon and therefore also intrigues Richard. But, you see, Richard is the enemy of the detective. So what about the son? You know, like he initially thinks that he wants to kidnap the son in order to lure Richard to him. But as he gets to know the son, he kind of thinks, do I really want to put him in harm's way? Do I really want to do that? And Richard is someone who has a hard time understanding like caring emotions and stuff like that. He has a different viewpoint. So Richard is a psychopath and not portrayed in an evil, psychopaths are evil type of way that the media always does. It's just a different way of looking at the world and understanding emotions. And so he has some kind of connection with the son. And so does he still want to use the son as bait to lure his father in and then execute the father in front of the son? Does he want to do that anymore? Like, so he kind of faces a dilemma. Anyway, that's the plan. What does he do at the end? Well, eventually you're gonna find out on Ream. Eventually. So, see, I'm trying to come up with examples to give you an idea about what they're talking about. I'm not even completely sure what they're talking about because they're not getting examples. I wish S.C. Redfearn would have given some examples. That would have been nice. Even if it's an example, as I said, that isn't actually like a real book or even from her own story. It's just made up for this article. That would have just been nice. Because this is just a bunch of words. It's a bunch of words. It's not how do we like apply this to our like writing? Like, how am I supposed to, like, if I do actually have a good versus good situation in Alive at Dawn, which is Alive at Dawn and the sequel are collectively called their posthumous lives duology, TPL. So anyway, how do I apply that to the duology? I don't know at all because there are no examples, and I'm trying to really figure out what is going on here in my story and how am I missing anything that I need to add because of what they're saying here. I don't know. So they're saying that way, no matter how the story unfolds, there are dreaded consequences as to what happens. So if it's is that true? No matter how the story unfolds, it will be dreaded. I mean, I guess if you think of My Sister's Keeper, if the girl does not become a donor, her sister will die. But if the sister becomes a donor, she will die? Was it that she will die or that she will become bedridden or something. I can't remember which it was. It might have been that she would die. So, I mean, that's a very stark example of dreaded consequences, right? But what would be something in which nobody dies, but somehow the consequences are dreaded? Like, what would that even look like? So, you see, I don't know. So, if you could give some examples here about, a dreaded consequence that's about people dying, but also about just, because they say here, one side wins and the other loses. Something hasn't worked out wholly. Someone the reader cares about will have suffered. But they're not saying someone the reader cares about will have died. They just say suffered. So maybe if you get an example of what that looks like, and so then it would give people a better idea on how to actually apply this to their own story. That's what I'm getting at. What do you guys think? Oh, it's a yawn. Be objective. Your job as a storyteller is to present the characters and events in an honest and objective way. Embody each character equally and channel them without prejudice onto the page. The key to a successful good versus good story is for the reader to feel intensely for both characters and to be torn by the idea of only one being able to prevail. I think you just said that in the previous section. I started reading in a very mocking way because it's just fluff, and more fluff. Give me some examples. What are these writing advice articles without examples? I hate it. Ugh. It's not helping. Your job as a storyteller is in an honest and objective way. What does that look like? Tell me what it actually looks like. Would it hurt you to do that? No. Okay. Embody each character equally and channel. What does it mean to channel them without prejudice onto the page? What does that even mean? Does it mean that, like, for example, a very extreme example, like say a character is a racist, but you still have to channel them without prejudice onto the page. Like, how are you going to do that? How? Like, that's an example. It's a stark example, but what if that was the case? What are you going to do? Huh? What are you going to do? Embody each character equally. Like, what if one of them is a racist and the other is a mass murderer? Like, what? How are you going to do that? How are you going to, if it's too striking, like, I don't know. Maybe you even use My Sister's Keeper as an example. Like here, because I don't fully remember the story, but come on, give me something, help us out here, please. Yeah. What is it with writing advice articles and examples? Like, if you're going to give advice, give examples. Like, logically, it makes sense. I'm doing so many hand gestures and you can't see me. The character should evolve to understand the other's views. Okay, I see Redfearn. Now what are we getting into? I don't have high hopes. As the story progresses, both characters should grow and come to understand the other's perspective. This creates internal conflict and the potential for a wavering of their conviction, even if they only admit it to themselves. The internal struggle is as important as the external conflict. It should not be easy for the protagonist to stay on course. It should get more difficult as the story develops. Raise the stakes and push the boundaries for what is right and how far the characters are willing to go to stand by their beliefs. Force them to make impossible choices that have morally ambiguous outcomes, and then to suffer the consequences of those decisions. What does it mean to suffer the consequences of those decisions? What does that even mean? Shoulder shrug. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? What does that even mean? Okay. As I was reading this, I was thinking about the My Sister's Keeper, because I need an example to understand things that are happening. So, creates an internal conflict. Can understand, because of course the sister doesn't want her sister to die. She wants to save her sister, if she can. But if she saves her sister, she might die. And now the dying sister also knows what is going on, I think, and so she wants her sister to live a happy life. But in order for her sister to live a happy life, she has to die. That is pretty stark example, I suppose. So there is this internal struggle with the external conflict. I mean, I think I can see that. Can you see that in that example that I gave, that they didn't give? Should not be easy for the protagonist to stay on course and get more difficult as story develops. So I don't really remember how the story develops in My Sister's Keeper. I just remember that conflict. I don't remember how the story develops, why and how it gets more difficult. So it would have been nice if you gave that example here. I mean, if you're afraid of spoilers, as I said, give an example, make up a story for this article. It shouldn't be so hard to do, especially if you think that you're an expert on this. Raise the stakes and push the boundaries for what is right and how far the characters are willing to go to stand by their beliefs. So this would be like, I don't remember My Sister's Keeper. This would be like if the sister that is the donor says, I don't want to become a donor. I don't want to do that. I want to live my own life, and runs away. Does she stay away while her sister is dying, or does she relent and return? How far is she willing to go to stand by her beliefs? How far are the parents willing to go to stand by their beliefs, pinning their daughters against each other like that? And making impossible choices that have morally ambiguous outcomes. What would that look like? Make impossible choices. If the choices are impossible, how would they give morally ambiguous outcomes? I'm pretty sure S.E. Redfearn is thinking about her own novel as she's writing this, but I've never read her book and I'm not interested in reading it. Okay, I'm just not. So how is this? What is that? Force them to make impossible choices that have morally ambiguous outcomes. What is an impossible choice with a morally ambiguous outcome? What is all this fluff? Don't resolve the dilemma. Leave the reader to draw their own conclusions. The story is a shared journey, and each reader will experience and perceive it in their own way. Don't impose your thoughts or opinions or prophesize or editorialize. The thrill of a dueling tale of morality is that it makes the reader think and hopefully leads to lingering contemplation and meaningful discourse when it is done. If you've done your job well, there will be no clear answer, only heightened perception of the question. Okay. As I was reading that, I did think about the book Perdido Street Station by China Miéville, which gave me severe book hangover, and it's been years since I read it. But It's a great book about dilemma and about cause and effect. It's so well done with this cause and effect. Oh my gosh, you should read it if you're interested in adult dystopian cosmic horror elements fantasy urban fiction thing. Okay. So in Perdido Street Station, there are a lot of dilemmas, and one of the characters does go through a dilemma in which he can choose to save his friend. He can choose to save his friend, or he can choose to respect his friend's culture by not saving his friend. And so he is faced with this dilemma, and he is generally he's a flawed character, of course, but he's a morally ambiguous character, I would say. He has to decide how, so his friend's tribe comes to this character and threatens that if you intervene into our culture and our ways, it's sort of insinuating that we will hunt you down, kind of thing. You will suffer some consequences. Please do not intervene, is what they are saying. And this character is faced with a dilemma because his friend has just saved his life many times. And he feels that he owes it to his friend to then, in turn, save the friend. But he also is afraid of being hunted by this tribe. And he is also actually on the run, and he needs to he wants to be safe. He's been on the run for months and months. He doesn't want to deal with it anymore. So, but he also knows that his friend has saved his life. So what does he decide? He wants to save his friend, but he also wants to save himself. And so he does end up saving, he ends up saving himself and doesn't tell the friend of his decision. They just up and leave. They don't tell a friend where they're going. They just up and leave. And so the friend finds out about this betrayal. And it was a very bittersweet, but not really bittersweet. It was a very conflicting moment for me reading it. It's like the happy ending would be if he saved the friend and they were able to escape the tribe. But this author doesn't want anyone to be happy, in a sense. Nobody is happy in the story, particularly. It was very conflicting moment in that book. I won't tell you where it is. So I would say that would be called A Dueling Tale of Morality. It made me think, and it led to a lingering contemplation and meaningful discourse. So, in a sense, Perdido Street Station might be a good example for this one section. One section here. Don't resolve dilemma. The dilemma was not resolved by avoiding the happy ending. It was even uglier because I knew that this character was actually being selfish too. Despite his friend having sacrificed things for him, he is choosing to betray that friendship. He is choosing to be selfish. But made me think that if I was in his position, would I sacrifice my safety and allow the tribe to continuously hunt me down when I'm already on the run and feel psychologically exhausted? Or would I say, that's enough, I'm out of this, and betray my friend? That was a thing. It really made me think about that moment for quite some time. And no answer. No answer. But that's what you want to have happen, I suppose. And I think that's what she is saying. And it would have been good if she gave an example. See, I gave an example and I'm not particularly spoiling anything. So, it would be interesting if... It would be good, not interesting. It would be good if she put more examples. So that is what I got out of this. I mean, I'm not saying that what she's saying is weird or wrong here, but she could have given some examples, and I just here and now tried to give examples for you. So that's the end of this. I almost said that's the end of this book. That's the end of this. That's the end of this. That's the end of this article. So overall, as I said, she didn't say anything bad or wrong or weird. It's just a fluff. A lot of fluff and no examples. So I tried to give examples. That could be improved here. You could add examples. That would be great. Adding just examples, some examples in this introduction part, that's not enough. I mean, it did help me think about My Sister's Keeper, but I just happened to be familiar with it because I watched the movie, I think. It would be great if you could give some more examples, even if you have to make up an example specifically for this article. And I've said that many, many times. You can do that. Pretty sure it's fine. So is this 5 tips though? 5 tips for writing stories about good versus good. I think what we did here is I think what she did here is she dissected what is needed in a story to be about good versus good. She just dissected that. Are these tips? I'm not sure. And everything in these tips, it's like, it says both characters need to be, or there needs to be a real dilemma. Be objective. That is a command that you do. You must do this. The characters should evolve. And also don't resolve dilemma. That is, don't do this. So are these definite things that you need to have or you need to do that should be and must happen and that is essential? Is that true or not? You know, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know anything about that. So you tell me what you think and we can have a chat in the comments. So was this a good article? It's a start. I would say I wouldn't give it like if it's out of 5, I wouldn't give it a 1. I wouldn't give it a 2, maybe a 3. I feel like it could be better. Is the examples the only thing that is missing? I'm not exactly sure. I feel like she could have, I don't know. Do they really need to be? Do they really need to be in this way? Do you have to say it like this? Both characters need to be ambiguously good and sympathetic. Do they? Wording maybe could change a little bit. 5 essential factors to consider, and yet the title is 5 tips. I don't know if that was tips, so I think 3 is a good one. 3 is good. 3 out of 5 stars for this article. It's okay. It could be better. It's average. It's just average. So, okay. That's the end of this video. And let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let's have a discussion. I had some questions. There were some things that I wasn't sure about. I mean, I did try to give some examples, but let me know if you know some better examples, and if you can talk about it without particularly giving names and stuff. That might help avoid spoilers. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. I hope you have a lovely day and keep hydrated. And yeah, that's it. The fox is out.